Hello, my wonderful friends. Welcome back to r/ProRevenge, where many of you come to hear stories about people getting what they deserve. Guys, in this episode, you're gonna hear two tales. The first was emailed to me by a lovely subscriber. Thank you very much. And is how a neighborhood punk gets put in his place after he terrorizes OP for the longest time. The second story, OP gets framed by his manager and fired from work, and then decides to come back for the manager's job. I hope you stay for these wonderful stories today, and do hit that subscribe button for future stories. Let's dive in. This first story is titled, Revenge on My Neighborhood Terrorizer. He pissed himself. That's always good to know. This story took place in the early 90s. I'm an adult now, and looking back on this day, I still can't believe what went through our minds as kids. Kids can be cruel, I find, because they don't understand consequence and are just mean for fun. When I was about 10 years old, me and my friend Kyle were constantly terrorized by these older kids that lived in the same neighborhood. The leader of the bully pack was a boy named Jake. Jake thought it was the funniest thing in the world for him and his friends to always chase us down the alley, to pull down our pants, to throw dirt at us, or sometimes take our shoes and throw it into a stranger's backyard. It made for some awkward and embarrassing situations for us as kids, and we felt quite powerless against these older kids. When you're 10 years old, you don't quite have that strength that a 13-year-old has, so Jake was much stronger than us. But one day Jake took it too far. Me, Kyle, and some other friends were sitting on the monkey bars at the school playground, about an hour after school let out. I can't remember. I recall school ending at 2:50, and it was almost 4 o'clock. Jake and his friends came out of nowhere, scared the crap out of us, and chased us, trying to do their usual antics. In the chase, I dropped my lunch bag, to which Jake grabbed and rummaged through it, ignoring my pleas to give it back. He found the special snacks that I was saving from lunch to eat after school, a fruit roll-up and a chocolate milk, and he ate them. I rarely got those because growing up, we were always tight on money, and my family could not afford to buy snacks for me all the time. On a rare occasion, we did find some extra money, and I would get some sugary snacks as a treat. Little did I know, this after-school bullying thing would become a regular occurrence. All the time after school, the bullying amplified. Jake would find me and Kyle walking home, and him and his buddies would push us around and beat us up. One day, I had enough and tried hitting back, and was left with a bloody nose as Kyle literally grabbed me by the shirt collar and threw me into a garbage can in the back alley. I was furious. Why didn't I tell a teacher or a parent? Honestly, I'm not sure. It would always happen after school, and Jake didn't go to the same school as us, so I didn't think anything could be done. I couldn't avoid this kid either. I'd try to take a detour home or hide in the classroom until I thought the coast was clear, but somehow, he would always find me. It was like Jake had some superpower smell and could sniff us out. It was the worst. Eventually, I had enough of it and decided that I needed to fight back. I was not letting this boy pick on me any longer. I had to be careful because Jake was much bigger than me and he could physically outpower me. Over the next few weeks, Kyle and I formulated a plan, a revenge plan. One Friday after school, I knew Jake would purposely try to find me as I was walking home with Kyle. He'd always try to give us one last beating before the weekend. This time, we were prepared to get our revenge. We just needed to get him to a specific street. Now, our neighborhood was old. A lot of the houses were probably 80 years old or more, and therefore, some had been abandoned and boarded up. There were usually squatters that had ripped off the boarded window and left the house open for the kids to play in. It's super sketchy to think about now that I'm an adult. There was one particular house that Kyle and I played in quite often. Lo and behold, on my walk home, Jake found us. He pushed Kyle to the ground and then pulled my backpack off me and started to go through my bag again looking for snacks and goodies. When he found my mom's homemade brownies, which I purposely left in the backpack, he started going to town on it while starting to walk away. That's when I said loudly and sarcastically, "I hope that brownie tasted real good, Jake." I had caught his attention, and he stared at me while I finished and said, "'Cause I made sure to add a special ingredient to that, just for you." "What special ingredient?" I replied, "Oh, some dog crap." I barely had enough time to finish my sentence before this hulk of a boy started sprinting at us, ready to beat the crap out of me. Kyle and I booked it as fast as we could, making sure to go towards the abandoned house and not too far away. For the record, no, I did not put dog poop in the brownie. I thought about it, because the brownie was plant-based and tasted off to me. I thought it was enough to make him doubt the special ingredient. So here we were, running for our lives with Jake on our heels, when we get to the yard of the abandoned house. There's a big open basement window in the back. The glass was gone, thankfully, and when we rounded the corner, Kyle ducked fast and clambered in. I was right behind him and slid through the window like I was stealing third base or something. Jake was extremely close behind, and when we heard him shout, "Get back here," Kyle and I shuffled through the dark of the basement and hid in our spots. I watched through a hole in the wall as Jake struggled to get through the open window and dropped down into our trap. Now, when Kyle and I went through the window, we were careful to land on a skinny ledge and shuffle to the side to hide. With the way Jake came in, he stepped right into the kiddie pool we left there, which was full of muddy water mixed in with our pee and poop. Yup, we were gross boys, and for the past week, we had been coming here after school to relieve ourselves into the kiddie pool. Looking back as an adult, what the hell were we thinking? Jake yelled something as soon as he felt his feet soaked, and the smell of the urine and fecal matter hit him hard. He screamed, "Are you serious? I'm gonna kill you!" He stepped out of the kiddie pool and started stalking the basement, his feet making squish squish noises with every step, demanding we come out. We stayed hidden and stayed silent. Kyle and I knew the house very well, but Jake didn't. Whichever direction Jake went, we went the opposite. Then, in his search, Jake walked into one of the rooms in the basement, and we slammed the door behind him, locking him in. This is a dark room with a boarded window that didn't allow a lot of light in, so it made for a pretty freaky setting. Jake started pounding on the wall and screaming at us to let him out. Remember how this is an abandoned house that has squatters in here from time to time? Well, the basement was pretty filthy. There were some dirty old mattresses, newspapers, broken glass, etc. just littered everywhere. But that also meant that people dumped random stuff on the property, like old Halloween decorations. We had placed one of the zombie bodies into the corners and was motion activated, but it was broken. Instead of making a low, growling, moaning sound, the zombie made a high-pitched screeching noise as the voice box was broken, I guess. While Jake was banging on the door, the prop caught motion and came to life with glowing red eyes. It let out a death screech and it jerked around violently. This scared the bejesus out of Jake. His cries quickly turned from anger to fear, and I heard him yelp terror, which only made him become more desperate for us to let him out. But I wasn't done. I had climbed up onto some old furniture to a little gap in the ceiling that connected to the room, situated right above the door. We timed it so that the moment the zombie stopped moving, I dropped a whole skeleton prop on him. As soon as Jake felt the bones drop on him, he screamed at the top of his lungs into a vent that amplified his voice tenfold. Jake screamed like a kid in a nightmare. "Let me out!" Just like clockwork, the zombie thing caught movement again and started its devil death cry and convulsed in the corner, freaking out Jake some more. As he was panicking, Kyle and I unlocked the door and stealthily made our exit out the window to the outside. As much as I'd like for Jake to have stayed there, I knew we couldn't leave him forever. With the way the house was boarded up, Jake only had one exit, which was the window, and we waited right outside of it. After a few moments, Jake emerged out of the house, disheveled and defeated, looking like a bag of beaten potatoes. He was covered in dust, his ankles were dripping in disgusting pee water, and his shoes were wet and caked in poo, and to my glee, his crotch area was soaked, as he was wearing light brown jeans. The bugger pissed himself in fear. I made sure he saw me when he came out, and as soon as he made eye contact with me, I took my dad's Polaroid camera and snapped a photo of him. I said to him, "Don't ever steal my snacks and mess with me ever again," and I left very quickly. From then on, Jake never bothered me or Kyle again. Jake also never made eye contact with me for years after that. I'm not sure if it was from fear or embarrassment. Now, to this day, Kyle is still one of my closest friends. Kyle's older sister went to school with Jake and said he did a complete 180 after that little incident. Jake grew up to be a pretty decent guy, and through mutual Facebook friends, I creeped his profile and found out that he works as a nurse in a children's hospital. I kept a photo in a memory box under my bed. My initial intention was to show everyone how he peed himself, but eventually, I just kept it as a souvenir of my most brilliant revenge. I wish I could have shown you this photo, but my mom ended up cleaning my room when I was a teenager, and she threw everything out she could get her hands on, including that wonderful photo and my first Playboy magazine. That was a great revenge, and thanks for emailing me this lovely story, Jesse. Planning the revenge in an abandoned building was a super sketch thing to do, especially for a 10-year-old. I'm glad you guys didn't run into a group of drug-addicted squatters in there, because that would have been horrendous and could have possibly been a nightmare for all of you. This story is titled, Senior Manager Gets Me Fired. I turn things around and get her job and her salary, plus see her break down and then let her know exactly how I got my revenge. I was hired by a company as an assistant manager, a job I was well qualified for. The owner is rarely on site as he owns several businesses. The company is run by a GM who hired me, but who works mostly second shift, and who I therefore have little daily contact with since I was hired for first shift. I was assigned to Eva for training. Eva was a manager and had been with the company for 5 years. I trained with her for a few days and then was on my own. We were friendly, but not close. After a few months, I was doing well at my job and had even gotten some new procedures adopted to help boost sales. Eva began to act resentful. She would correct me for small things and took any opportunity to remind me that she had trained me. It didn't matter to me. She wasn't my boss. I reported to the GM, so I mostly just ignored her. What I didn't know was that Eva was not just tight with the GM, but they had worked together at another place for 10 years before this one. One day at shift end, the GM asked to talk. She tells me it's not working out, says I'm still making mistakes at 6 months that I shouldn't be. I ask for examples. A few of them were petty matters that Eva had mentioned, but most of them were just not true. I tried to argue, but it was clear that I was set up and framed. I decided to reach out to the owner since I had nothing to lose. He was sympathetic, but said he relies on the GM to run the business and had to support her decision. Then he mentioned that if things hadn't been so bad between me and Eva, it probably could have been worked out. That's when I knew she was behind me being fired from a job that I needed, really liked, and was making great money. And I vowed to get revenge. I started searching her online info. In less than an hour, I had uncovered gold, thanks to one of those pay services. About 3 months prior, Eva was arrested and charged with a DWI in a neighboring state. The court record showed that she had a hearing coming up in a few weeks, and that was enough to get her fired. It affects a professional license that she and I had to have as management. Per state law, license holders must report criminal charges to the licensing board, and in the case of a DWI arrest, licenses are typically suspended pending trial. I called the owner and told him what I discovered. It was great news to him. I guess since it was out of state, Eva was keeping it a secret. Maybe she was hoping to get let off the charges. The next day, the owner called and said Eva was fired. He thanked me for telling him about her DWI, apologized for how I was fired, and offered me Eva's position and salary. He asked me to come in the next morning to meet with him and to cover Eva's shift, and I accepted. That alone was sweetly satisfying revenge. But what happened next was the icing on the cake. I got to work extra early, met with the owner and GM, and we all agreed to start fresh. Cool. It was still an hour before opening, and I was in the back of the place when I heard the door chime. When I came out a few minutes later, Eva was there, tears flowing, begging the owner for her job back. She obviously didn't know I was there, because when she saw me, her whole body seized, and her shocked expression was priceless. I walked right by her, staring her down with a grin. Eva came out a minute later and wouldn't make eye contact. As she walked away, I said, "Good luck on the 23rd. That was her court date. If the GM and Eva had a 10-year-long relationship and were buddy-buddy, I'd say OP should watch his back. It's time to find some dirt on the GM and assume that role and salary as well, my friend. And that wraps up another episode of r/ProRevenge. Guys, if you have not caught the last episode of r/ProRevenge, a fake friend uses OP to dine and dash all the time. So if you haven't heard it, go check it out now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.